Today's video is sponsored by Raycon, home of wireless earbud designs, inspired by underdogs and big dreams. Raycon earbuds start at about half the price of other premium wireless earbud brands, but they sound just as amazing as other top audio brands, and they look pretty cool too. Check it out. These are the everyday E25 earbuds. Super soft and flexible to fit different ear sizes. What I'm loving about them is the seamless Bluetooth pairing, so I can easily listen to podcasts and audiobooks when I'm on the go, working out, and even when I'm at home and want to take a screen break but still keep up with the news or chill out. These everyday E25s are good for 6 hours of continuous playtime, but this handy case doubles as a charger, and you can recharge up to 4 times while you're out and about, commuting, getting some fresh air, wherever life takes you. So if you want a premium earbud offering quality audio for work or play, at home or on the go, give Raycon a try. Even better, you don't have to take my word for it. Raycon offers a 45-day free return policy. Now's the time to get the best prices of the year on Raycons. But hurry, this offer is available for a limited time only. Click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/VisualPolitik to get 15% off your order. Qatar got off scot-free. Exactly 43 months after setting it in motion, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Egypt ended the brutal land, sea and air blockade they had imposed on Qatar since June 2017. So on the 5th of January 2021, the politics of the Persian Gulf marked up yet another important date in its turbulent history book. During the 41st annual meeting of the Gulf Cooperation Council held in the Saudi city of Al Ula, the participants agreed once and for all to put an end to the commercial and political blockade on the country ruled by the House of Al Thani. It has not exactly been an easy road. For example, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, the all-powerful Mohammed bin Zayed, who we have already talked about on VisualPolitik, decided not to attend the council, perhaps to avoid acknowledging the resounding political failure that the blockade on Qatar has been. But why did they decide to lift it? What were the consequences of this massive boycott? Why do we say that Qatar got off scot-free? In this video, we're going to answer all these questions, but first, we have to know how and when this whole mess started.
A brutal block.
Qatar has always been something like the wayward child of the Persian Gulf, at least in the eyes of the Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. But to really understand the origin of this whole story, we have to go back to 2013. That year, the then King of Saudi Arabia, Abdullah bin Abdulaziz, together with the Emirs of Kuwait and Qatar, at that time, Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed al-Jabbar al-Sabah and Tamim bin Hamad al-Thani signed the so-called Riyadh Agreement. The following year, Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates also joined these agreements. Under this agreement, the Gulf countries pledged not to support or harbour members of hostile organisations such as the Muslim Brotherhood. However, as time went on, Qatar was never seen to take this agreement very seriously by its neighbours. This, coupled with Qatar's good relations with Iran, whilst the rest of the Gulf monarchies were frequently subject to criticism from Al Jazeera, triggered the events of 4th of January 2017. On that day, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain issued an ultimatum. Either Qatar fixed the situation or they would face a near-total blockade by land, sea and air. And that is exactly what happened. On the 5th of January 2017, these 3 countries cut diplomatic ties, closed their borders and cancelled sea routes and access to their respective airspace. They blocked the entry of Qatari citizens and residents into their own countries and gave their own citizens 14 days to leave the blockaded country. In fact, as hard as it may be to believe, not even the camels were spared. 12,000 camels grazing on Saudi soil were sent back to Qatar. Other countries such as Egypt, the Maldives, Mauritania, Jordan and Senegal also joined this campaign by cutting their relations with Qatar. Even US President Donald Trump initially supported the action led by the UAE and Saudi Arabia, despite the fact that Qatar is home to the main US base in the Middle East. So at first, the general idea was that Qatar would not take too long to bend the knee. That is, to capitulate, to surrender, to submit. So how on earth could a small country of less than 3 million people possibly survive such a blockade? A blockade that even included some dirty war tactics. It's been leaked that the UAE hired former NSA agents to spy on Qatar, and that, according to information gathered by Bloomberg, it asked the Luxembourg-based bank Haveland to draw up a plan to bleed the Qatari central bank's accounts in order to force a currency crisis. An action that, according to the complaint made by the Qatari government has cost it at least $40 billion. Yes, that's right, you heard that right, $40 billion. It seems that the plan designed by the Luxembourg Bank consisted of creating a fund to buy Qatari debt and CDSs, or credit default swaps, insurance policies against default on that debt. In this way, the fund would simulate with other related funds transactions of Qatari bonds at a decreasing price in a round-trip flow. The aim would be to make the market believe that a massive outflow of investors was taking place, which would generate a kind of panic effect that would lead more and more investors to liquidate their positions in the Qatari market. The outflow of capital would multiply the supply of the local currency, the Qatari Rial, forcing the central bank to rescue its currency by spending billions and billions of dollars to maintain the parity between the Rial and the US dollar and thus avoid a run on the banks. At the same time, default insurance policies would rise in price, allowing the UAE to recoup a large part of the losses suffered with the bonds. That is the plan that has been leaked, and although it is not known to what degree it was executed, what is certain is that immediately after the blockade was announced, the Qatari banking system suffered a leakage of more than $30 billion, which forced the government to call on the Sovereign Wealth Fund to come to the aid of the banking system.
Qatar's wealth fund returns $20 billion to Qatar to ease the impact of the embargo. Deposits provide liquidity to banks following neighbors' decisions to cut ties. Financial Times.
It is clear that the UAE and Saudi Arabia were going hard. During these years of sanctions, Qatar spent close to $40 billion propping up its currency and banking system. Property prices lost almost a third of their value, and foreign investment plummeted into negative territory. In other words, during each and every year, investment outflows were greater than inflows. But hold on a moment, because 3.5 years later, the blockade has been lifted without Qatar fulfilling a single one of the 13 demands made. Demands that included shutting down Al Jazeera, distancing itself from Iran, closing any Turkish installations in the country, and breaking all ties with the Muslim Brotherhood. And not only that, Saudi Arabia and especially the UAE have suffered from the blockade almost as much as Qatar. Far from achieving their objectives, they have actually provoked the opposite result. But do you want to know exactly what happened and how Qatar got away with it? Well, listen up.
A different path.
According to the plan, Qatar would bear the brunt of the blockade and Doha would soon be forced to sit down and negotiate. But wait a minute, because things don't always go according to plan. Surprisingly, the Qatari economy learned to live with the embargo much sooner than anyone would have thought. It's true that GDP fell by 1.5% in 2017, yes, but for the following 2 years, growth returned to positive figures. And even in 2020, coronavirus included, Qatar has had the least bad performance of all the Gulf countries and is expected to have the fastest recovery. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves is, how did they manage to do it? Well, you see, with the overnight blockade, as we have already mentioned, the country's main trade routes were suddenly closed, so a solution had to be found urgently. To give you an idea, Qatar is a country that relies heavily on foreign suppliers to meet its daily activities. For example, at the time of this diplomatic crisis, it was importing 90% of its food. And take note, because more than 40% of all of these imports came into the country through its land border with Saudi Arabia. So that gives you the idea of the scale and urgency of the problem. The Qatari government had to quickly look for alternatives to find new partners and viable transport routes as soon as possible. And you know what? That's exactly what they did. As we say around here, no sooner said than done. In a way, Qatar was going to make the plan backfire on the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Okay, but let me repeat the question. How did they pull it off? Well, first of all, if any of you were going to go for a walk in Doha today, you would certainly notice the increasing presence of people and businesses of Turkish origin. Faced with the cold shoulder of its neighbors, Qatar decided to look for a new trading partner, a sort of bigger cousin, capable of supplying all the products the country needed while defending it from a possible military invasion. And that's exactly what they did with Turkey. Since 2017, ties between the two countries have become increasingly close. On the one hand, as you can see, Qatari purchases of Turkish products have increased threefold. What's more, since the beginning of the blockade, Turkish military presence in Qatar has increased tenfold, and a second Turkish military base has been opened in the vicinity of Doha, much larger than the first one. In return, Qatar has boosted its direct investment in Turkey to become the third largest investor in the entire country. Ports, Factories, hotels, financial institutions, both the Qatari government and private investors are investing and buying all kinds of assets in Turkey. And not only that, the Qatari government has also come to the rescue of the Turkish government during the worst moments of the lira crisis.
May 20th, 2020. Qatar pours $10 billion into ailing Turkish economy in currency swap deal. Ankara once again receives financial help from close Gulf ally as it battles to contain rapid depletion of its foreign reserves. MEE. November 26th, 2020. Qatar to invest billions of dollars in Turkey amid currency crisis. The Qatari government has signed new investment deals worth billions of dollars for the Turkish economy. MEE.
But it's not just Turkey. Another country which Qatar has forged closer ties with has been with Saudi Arabia's #1 archenemy, Iran. You see, Qatar has always had cordial relationships with the country of the Ayatollahs, among other things because they share the largest natural gas field in the world. However, after the blockade was imposed, Tehran set up a sort of air bridge to supply Qatar with 100 tons of food a day to avoid a potential food crisis. And since then, commercial ties between the two countries have increased fourfold, and Qatar Airways was able to continue its operations using Iranian airspace in exchange for a commission of $100 million a year. Meanwhile, the Qatari government has also boosted its relations with both China and Russia. For example, the Qatari Sovereign Wealth Fund increased its stake in Rosneft, the Russian state-owned energy company, to 19%, an investment that received high praise from the Kremlin as a vote of confidence in the Russian economy.
March 11th, 2019. Qatar seeks more Russia deals after great Rosneft investment. Bloomberg.
Then, at the local level, the Qatari government has accelerated the reform process to gain competitiveness and reduce its dependence on imports. For example, changes have been approved that make it easier for international investors and entrepreneurs to achieve residency status in the country. It has been announced that the jurisdiction of the International Court of Qatar will be extended. That is, its own legal system based on British common law will extend beyond the financial centre. It has continued to invest heavily in infrastructure, such as the Doha Metro, and has boosted the agri-food industry to the point of achieving self-sufficiency in areas such as dairy products, which previously were mainly imported from Saudi Arabia. But take note, because the changes are not limited to the economic sphere. In 2017, the fear of a possible invasion by its Arab neighbours in Doha was very intense. That is why they decided to prepare themselves to prevent it. On the one hand, as we have mentioned, ties with Turkey were strengthened, and it was agreed that Turkey would open a new military base, a base that was inaugurated in 2019 and has the capacity to house 5,000 Turkish soldiers. On the other hand, Qatar has thrown itself into developing its armed forces. Since 2017, it has not only multiplied its budget, but has embarked on a gigantic military equipment program. Its air force, for example, will go from having 12 old Mirage 2000s to being equipped with 96 modern fighter jets in the space of just a few years. This will include 36 French Rafale, 36 state-of-the-art F-15s, and 24 Eurofighters. This will make the Qatari Air Force one of the most formidable in the world. And remember that we're talking about a country with less than 3 million inhabitants. The bill, almost $30 billion. But it's not just aircraft. Qatar is buying everything. Missiles, drones, tanks, artillery, anti-aircraft devices, patrol boats, submarines, etc, etc, etc. So the result of the blockade, 3.5 years after it was launched, has been the exact opposite of that expected by the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Not only has Qatar not fulfilled a single one of the demands made, but instead of distancing itself from Iran and expelling the Turkish army as demanded, it has strengthened its ties with these two countries. To make matters worse, Qatar is today economically and militarily stronger and more autonomous than it was in 2017. In other words, the blockade was basically a gigantic failure, something that, by the way, had a lot to do with the two big heroes of the economy of Qatar, the richest country in the world.
Qatar's great stars.
Qatar has become a natural gas superpower, one of the most fashionable natural resources in the global economy. In contrast to its neighbours, oil plays a relatively small role here. The bulk of Qatar's fortune comes from gas. This small state of just 11,500 kilometers square, that's 6 times smaller than Ireland, or is roughly the size of Connecticut, is the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas and has the 3 largest proven reserves behind only Iran and Russia. Since the government launched a strategy in the 1990s to lead the development of liquefaction technology that allows natural gas to be exported in large LNG carriers, Qatar has continued to invest in expanding its capacity. In fact, it is currently immersed in a plan totaling more than $50 billion of investment to increase its production by 40% by 2027, and to have its own fleet of more than 100 huge modern methane tankers to sell its gas all over the planet.
June 3rd, 2020. South Korean shipbuilders land $20 billion LNG tanker deals with Qatar. Asia Nikkei Review. February 9th, 2021. Qatar approves world's largest LNG project. Oil price.
And the truth is that the prospects are quite good. According to the British consultancy firm Wood Mackenzie, global demand for liquefied natural gas will double by 2040. And here, Qatar's cost advantage makes it one of the big winners in this growing trend. In fact, Qatar's investments are not only limited to its own country. The state-owned energy company is investing in new fields all over the world: South Africa, Angola, Ivory Coast, Cyprus, Mexico, and so on. In addition, liquefied natural gas contracts are often linked to the price of oil. Yet, unlike its neighbors, Qatar only needs a price of $30 per barrel to balance its public accounts. In other words, on paper, its position for the future seems quite strong. Within a short time, Qatari authorities expect to be able to earn more than $50 billion a year from their hydrocarbon exports. And don't forget that we are talking about a country with fewer than 3 million inhabitants and a population with Qatari nationality of just over 300,000 people. In other words, if it achieves its objectives, the country will soon be earning more than $18,000 per inhabitant per year, or more than $170,000 per citizen with Qatari nationality. Crazy. On the other hand, Qatar's second big star is its sovereign wealth fund, which year by year has been fattened by oil and gas profits. It's a huge fund that has more than $300 billion in investments spread all over the world. Stocks, bonds, real estate, soccer teams, media, commodities, everything. A gigantic fortune that has become a life insurance policy for the tiny nation. But at this point, we still have one last question to answer. We already know why the blockade was a failure, but why has it just been lifted at the beginning of 2021? Well, listen up.
Why now?
We can highlight 3 key reasons for the total suspension of the blockade. First of all, the victory of Joe Biden. Until now, Saudi Arabia and the UAE had virtually a free reign with the Trump administration. They got everything they wanted. However, now all that has changed, particularly in relation to Saudi Arabia. So let's say that first of all, it was kind of a goodwill gesture towards the new US administration. Don't forget that Qatar is a key ally for the United States, with a lot of supporters in Washington. But on the other hand, in relation to the political issue, there is also the economic one. We have already told you that Saudi Arabia is facing an uncertain economic future. Its oil wealth is no longer enough to pay all the bills. And it is precisely here that Qatar can be of great help. For example, there is speculation that Saudi Arabia may start importing large quantities of Qatari gas in order to reduce its own oil consumption and thus be able to increase its crude oil exports, as has already been done, for example, via the UAE. Then, Riyadh also aims to get investments from the huge Qatari sovereign wealth fund for some of its huge mega projects, with which it seeks to reduce its dependence on oil, and which we have already covered here on VisualPolitik. Also, don't forget that improving the political climate usually helps a lot in attracting international investors. After all, nobody likes to put their money in places full of conflict. And if there's one thing Saudi Arabia needs, it is investment. Lots of investment. So it seems that these 3 aspects have a lot to do with the decision to put an end, once and for all, to the brutal blockade under which Qatar has been punished for the 3.5 years. But at this point, it's your turn. Do you think Qatar has really got off scot-free, or is it the UAE holding back its last card? And what role do you think Joe Biden's administration should play in the Middle East? Leave your answers in the comments. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit like if you did. Don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos.
If you want to learn more about politics and world affairs and hear some more of my lovely voice, come check out the Reconsider podcast, where we don't do the thinking for you. Find Reconsider at www.reconsidermedia.com or on Apple or Google Play or your favorite podcatcher.